o'clock tonight. Warren County Center. Speaker series. Hello, everybody. Public forum of the county supervisor.
Hi, Susie.
Hi, thank you. Okay, so welcome to the candidate forum. This is being sponsored by the Greenfield Chamber Main Street. Stacy, where are you? Somewhere. There she is. Thanks, Stacy. And by the Warren Cultural Center Successful Community Speaker Series. And this is our second ever event in the Successful Communities. We had one where we had an expert come and talk to us about the state of education in Iowa. We're having this one. And then in February, we haven't arrived on a date certain, we're going to have one about healthcare in Adair County. And we're going to ask Marcia, the hospital administrator, and probably Jane, who does public health, to come and talk up to us about what's going on in Adair County. And this is the coolest Craig Plymester thought of. Nobody has, you can't go out for lunch or dinner in Adair County after church on Sunday. So we're going to do it some Sunday afternoon and have a soup, lunch, or something. So it'll be good fun. Look for that. And then we're having something in the spring as well. We think it's going to be some sort of funny, lighthearted thing. So we are glad that you're here and participating in democracy tonight. Tim Ostrowski from Creston, he is the director of, oh gosh, tell me, Tim.
Southern Iowa Council of Governments.
And what do you do, Tim?
We are can you hear me? No? We're a membership organization that provides planning, technical assistance, and grantsmanship to the 8 counties that we serve, and that includes Adair, Madison, Adams, Union, Clark, Decatur, Taylor, and Ringgold. We've been around since 1973, and I've done these forums in the past. I'm kind of from out of town, and I'm kind of the neutral source. I'm both Switzerland and, for tonight, eye candy.
So this reminds me that I'm supposed to tell you there will be no, certainly you can cheer for Tim and you can cheer for Mindy when they're done, but once the candidates start to speak, we ask that there not be applause, because when we applaud, then we don't have time to hear what everybody has to say. And so we really are interested in what the candidates have to say and how they will govern in House District 20 and in Adair County. So I'd like to introduce Mindy Schaefer. She's the Adair County Auditor, and I went and talked to her and I said, Mindy, I want to have this, satellite voting thing. Anyway, she's a Republican, I'm not, and we worked it out, and I think she's a star. So thanks, Mindy. She's going to tell us about voting.
Good evening. I'd like to thank everyone for coming. I'm Mindy Schaefer. I'm the County Auditor and the Commissioner of Elections for Adair County. And I'm here tonight to just tell you a little bit about voter registration and voting and absent voting in Adair County. And I'd like to thank Susie for inviting me here tonight to share some of my information. So for starters, absentee voting will start on Monday. The ballots we have in my office, and the first round of absentee balloting will go out on Monday. Also, my office will be open from 8 until 4:30, Monday through Friday, for anyone to come in to register to vote or to vote absentee. We are also required to be open on Saturday, October 27th, from 8 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock at night, and also on November 3rd, from 9 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock at night. We can do absentee balloting on both those days, and we'll do voter registration on the first Saturday that we're open. For voter registration, the deadline to pre-register to vote for this election is on Saturday, the 27th of October, up until 5 o'clock that night. That is for the pre-registration deadline. Now, you can still register to vote after that day, but it will be an election day registration, and you will be required to show proof of ID and proof of residency. For absentee voting, again, it starts on Monday, and any request, again, that we've received up until that point will go out on that day. The last day for us, my office, to be able to mail an absentee ballot is on October 27th. So the voter registration deadline and the last day for us to mail an absentee ballot is on the same day. Now, you can still come into my office to vote an absentee ballot. It's just we can no longer mail them out after that deadline. My office will be open until 5 o'clock on November 5th, the day before the election, again for absentee voting in the office. With the courthouse currently under construction with our elevator, there is a ramp on the side of the courthouse, but if you feel that anybody cannot maneuver that ramp, you can call my office and we can bring the forms and the ballot out to you doing curbside voting. For the first time in Adair County's history, we are going to be setting up a satellite voting station. A satellite voting station is ran exactly the same way as absentee voting is ran in the courthouse, only it's at a different location on a certain day for a certain amount of time. So on October 20th, it's a Saturday, we're going to have a satellite voting station at the Maple Village Community Room from 9 o'clock in the morning until 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Anybody can vote there. It does not just have to be people from that district. We will have the ballot styles for everyone in Adair County. Again, it's going to be ran exactly the same way as an absentee voting does at the courthouse, which means that you will have a paper ballot to fill out, and then you'll sign an affidavit and you'll put it in an envelope. Then those envelopes will be brought back to my office and they'll be counted with the rest of the absentee ballots on election day. If you have an absentee ballot, it has to be postmarked the day before the election in order to be counted if you mail it back in. If you did not get it in the mail the day before the election and you still have it, you can walk it into my office and it'll be counted either that day, or if the absentee board is done counting for that day, it'll be counted with the provisionals on the Thursday following the election. On election day, polls open at 7 o'clock in the morning and they will continue to be open until 9 o'clock at night. And curbside voting is also available on election day at the polls. So if somebody feels that they cannot get into the polling location, you can call my office and we can arrange for the ballot to be brought out to you from the polling place. On election day, you do not have to show ID. However, with our electronic poll books, we have a scanner system that if we scan the back of your driver's license or your government-issued ID, it will automatically pull up your voter registration, and so it makes the process a little bit faster. But you're not required to show ID for this election. It's just it helps to speed it along if you want. And are there any questions? That's pretty much all I have. All right.
When will we be required to show ID?
As of right now, I believe the new law is going to go into place on January 1st assuming nothing changes.
So if you don't have an ID, you still have to have proof of residency?
If you are pre-registered, you do not have to show proof of ID or proof of residency
You're pre-registered for what?
to vote. If you are pre-registered to vote and you've signed up your registration before October 27th.
So if you're registered to vote, is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Pre-registered.
pre-registered to vote, yes. Okay. Anything else? All right, thank you, Susan.
Susie, do we want to introduce the panel? And I don't want to get off.
No, just the candidates.
Okay. I have a reminder here, and I'm going to say it again. Remember, there is no clapping after individuals answer a question. It's written on my paper 37 times. Let me go ahead and introduce the supervisor candidates. And if you'd like, you can come up at this time. Steve Shelley, Democrat, running unopposed. Jody Haley, Democrat, and Doug Davidson, both running for the supervisor seat in 4 Southeast. Yeah. Oh. And I think everybody, you all have received this paper, but the process here is going to be a 90-second introduction about why you feel you're the best candidate for the job. And then the second question will be, what is your vision for Adair County as we go into the future? I'm going to hand back. I will let you know if there's a light here that we're looking on 90 seconds. So when it gets to red, if I can walk in front of you, I'm not being rude, I'm just trying to stay on task. Steve, we're going to go this direction across the front. And again, the question would be, explain why you think you're the best candidate for the job.
Good evening. I'm Steve Shelley, and I've been here 11 and a half years. First time I've been unopposed. We did this 12 years ago, and I think there was a dozen people, so I definitely thank you for coming out. Being the best candidate, I guess, maybe it's because I'm the only one. Maybe there's another coming tomorrow, I don't know. No, the experience of being there for 12 years, and when I went in, I don't think I understood hardly anything other than they set the taxes, and how the taxes are set, and where the taxes come from, and where the taxes go. This last check budget billing we had approved the other day, $113,000 for gravel for 1 month. And it's just, the zeros on the end get to boggle in your mind sometimes. You don't know, it's just understanding it and trying to, one thing's really important, and we have a board that does a real good job, and that's being there with regular attendance, because you can't do it when you aren't there. So I guess that's all I have. Thank you.
Hello and good evening. My name is Jody Hoadley. I believe that I am the best candidate for the Adair County Supervisor for District 4 Southeast, because I do believe and understand that the job of Adair County Supervisor is to protect and preserve the rights, privileges, and property of Adair County residents, and to improve the peace, safety, health, welfare, comfort, and convenience of all residents of Adair County as stated in the Iowa Code 331.301. I understand that all residents of Adair County need to be represented and the county funds need to be spent to benefit the residents of Adair County. I know how to work a full-time job, balance a budget, and get the residents of Adair County the best improvements for their money. Adair County can and will be made better with safer roads, wise spending, and decisions made in the best interest of Adair County and its residents. I pledge that I have no hidden agendas. I will study the issues that are important to the residents of Adair County and make decisions with respect and regard for Adair County, its residents, and their property.
Hi, my name is Doug Davidson. I'm running for the District 4 Southeast. I reside in Orient and own many businesses. I believe that I can do a lot with the county, especially for our area. I believe that in the next couple of years, there's going to be quite a bit of funding that will be available to do some things that we haven't been able to do or wanted to do and didn't have the funding for them. I'd like to also see our roads be safer and our education continue, and it's for all of Adair County, not just our area. I believe that there is a lot of opportunity for the county, more businesses, keep our schools up and going. Our basic sheriff's department, I'd like to see some more employment there, more county employment, and I'd also like to see new equipment that's needed to be updated all the time. I'm running, like I said, I just feel now is a very good time to run. It'll be an exciting time in the next 2 years, and I think that all the residents will see that. And I believe in doing budgets. I sit on 2 committees now. And I believe that I'm on the Southern Iowa Council of Governments Budget Committee. I'm also your Adair County Private Sector Representative, and I'm also on the Adair County Conservation Board. And I see a lot of budget things there that we have to change all the time, and I guess I'm out of time. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. The second question, what I'm going to do is just come down the line. First, second, third, as we go. The second question then is, what is your vision for the future of Adair County and approach to making the future a reality?
First and foremost, our roads and our bridges have to be our number one concern as far as getting people to work, school bus safety, and our crops to market. My second would be the economic development in Adair County. We need to work on this. We need to bring more people to Adair County with more business, so that we can get more money into our area besides what's coming in from the wind turbines. Also, I believe that we need to worry about our elderly and the mental health issue that is of vast importance to almost everyone, if not everyone, in this room. Everybody knows somebody that's not getting the mental health care that they need. My plan to see that this happens is for the roads. We've got several different funds that it is designated where that money can be spent. As far as our mental health and our elderly, we need help from the state, and we need to be able to spend our money where it needs to be spent on our residents.
I also agree with some of Jody's points on roads. I see a lot of Infrastructure that needs to be repaired. I believe that's one of our biggest things to make our county safe for everybody. Everyone that travels them, even maybe repair them, open up some more that have been closed for years. Law enforcement, I can see that in our area is needed badly. Some new employment, like I had said earlier. I would say that in my goal for that, I would like to see that part, the roads, the construction part of our roads, and the sheriff's department at least get some more employees so they can cover our whole county. Owning our business, it sometimes is a problem for them to be in one part of the county, not the other, and I know it's shorthanded, but with the funds that we will be getting, I believe we can do a lot of things with healthcare, everything in that department.
I think the number one thing in Dare County is actually the citizens. Part of that is the roads. You know, we got to watch out for everybody gets cared for. And, you know, sometimes we have a funeral we need to pay for, and that's the taxpayers that get to do that. And we need people on a trolley to get a ride to and from the grocery store or to the doctor. And all those things come out of the tax pocket. Our roads. This last year, we've taken 22 bridges, the signs off that said 8-ton bridge. We've taken 22 off, and I will match that with anybody in the United States. I think we got an excellent engineer that's spending the money right. We have money to spend. Not that we have money to waste, we do not. But we're tipping the windmills that we've got built, and that gives us a budget that we can work with, and we have put that to good use, in my opinion. The west side of the county, I don't believe there is an embargo bridge anywhere, and that's one with a weight limit sign on the west side in the TIF district. We've got them out. We got one great big one in the southwest corner I want to see built, but there's no population down there. The farmers need it very bad, but there's no population. And those are the kinds of things that I hope we can do, but with the taxation of the windmills has made road improvements a lot easier. It's just, I can't get to it. I'm not time. Thanks.
Did you notice how the moderator just stepped and everybody did what they were supposed to do? The next part of this will be 2 questions that have been submitted from the audience and given to me. And the individual that will start will be Mr. Davidson. The first question is, wind turbines are a topic of interest for Dare County citizens. What is your position on the spread of these into our county and others?
Oh boy. I hear this every day. I have not really, but I don't know how to put this, but I'm for them and not for them. I'm for the windmills, for the clean energy. The funds are going to bring to help our county, and boy, we need it. I agree with what they're doing now with the setbacks. I think that's going to be a good thing to compromise with a lot of folks. I also own an acreage, and I would not want one right in my backyard right there. But then again, now that the setbacks have been changed, I think that will be great. The funding and me owning a business, I can tell you the sales tax at my place the last 2 months since all these people have been here has doubled. And that's going to help our school systems. It's going to help our county out. As far as answering the question, the way it's asked, I would say yes, I'm for the windmills. And with the way things are going, I think it's a great, great opportunity for our county.
Well, as most of you know, said before I came down here, I wouldn't answer a windmill question, but I have a windmill, my wife and I have a windmill being built on our farm, so you know where I stand there. We signed the papers last fall. And the final question was, do I want to help Adair County or do I not? If I didn't let them put a wire across my farm, they'd have to hunt for another place to put it. Taxable assets of Mid-America in Adair County. Don't hold me exactly to the penny because I could be a tiny bit off. $127 million. Now that's the power lines and 127 mills. The next closest behind that is Cardinal Glass at 8.6 million. Now there's $119 million difference, and we are taking taxes off that. Now every windmill's taxed different because they're in different school districts, different fire districts, and different different townships. So there is some difference between what they're being taxed for. But Adair County will come the closest probably of any county in the nation at doubling their taxable assets in this next 6-8 months. And if you want roads, we got to have some money to pay for that $113,000 worth of gravel. Thank you.
The second question from the audience is,
Jody didn't answer.
you see how the moderator keeps things every...
Okay. Windmills pump water, wind turbines are electricity. Just for those of you that didn't know the difference. Where do I sit on that? I'm trying to take a middle ground. Those of you that own land, and it's your land, you're paying for it. If you want to put wind turbines on it that aren't bothering anybody else's home, I'm all for it because the county can use the money. I'm not all for putting them up against someone's property or home that doesn't want them there and is not participating. I think we can get enough money off of the ones that are where everybody can be happy, or middle of the road happy, to fund our roads, our schools, and the other places that will get the money from the tax off of the wind turbines. I do not feel that we need to disrupt people's safe place with the wind turbine.
Next question. The next question is, how has the property tax backfill affected Adair County, and what is your opinion on how to handle it?
The governor said that she's going to leave the backfill in place. We need that to help pay bills here in Adair County. If it goes away, we are going to have some major issues. Like I said, she says it's not going to go away, and if it does down the road, she's going to see that it's just in increments so that we can have time to figure out where we're going to come up with that money. Also, when we talk about monies for the county, for all different reasons and from different funds, not all money that comes into the county can be spent on whatever we want to spend it on. Certain money has to be spent on certain things and in certain areas. So Mindy gets the job of figuring out exactly how much we have, for what fund, for what purposes it can be spent on, and then we have to wrangle away to make the ends meet. And sometimes, like this year, property taxes went up to pay for a new deputy for our sheriff's department, which was needed throughout the whole county, but it's an expensive venture, and I think it's money well spent.
I know I'd like to express my appreciation for these people running for the supervisor's office. I know there are 35 times that it says no applause, but we're at the end of the supervisor's forum.
They didn't answer.
And the moderator, I'll repeat it again. How has the property tax backfill affected Adair County, and what's your opinion on how to handle it?
Okay. I understand, well, the part of this I understand is that if something does happen, it will come to us in increments. And I believe that I understand what Mindy does with the budgets and stuff for everyone and decides where this money goes. There's really, I believe that there'll be more funding, more than what would even, like Steven said, we'll have available to fulfill some of these other things if this money is cut off to us.
Now, they didn't say what the backfill was coming from or going to. I know Cloud knows. But backfill, I understand the way I envision what they're asking is this business property tax that was lowered by Governor Branstad. And the state said they would backfill what we didn't get off that 80%. So far, it's come back nice. But if the state gets in trouble, we all know it will end. And we all envision a sunset coming on it. But, yeah, I'm going to say we will be able to handle it to the best of probably any county because of the wind turbines. I mean, it's just mind-boggling what will happen. And I thank the Lord every day that I'm not a supervisor of Ringgold County or Taylor County that has no economic growth anywhere. It's just mind-boggling how lucky we are to have a tax increase, tax-based increase in Adair County.
Check with everybody. I'm okay today. We're at the end of the supervisor's forum. I certainly would like to thank them, and I give you the opportunity with applause to also thank them for their Next, we will go into the House District 20 election. Again, I'm going to remind the audience that there should be no applause during the presentation by the two individuals. Let me introduce Warren Varley and Ray Sorensen. Under this format, we're going to let you stand at the podiums on both sides, or you can sit if you want to. I'm not going to direct you whichever way you want, but we will follow about the same format that we did with the supervisors. That is that it'll be a 90-second answers scenario. I will do the first two questions, and then we'll get questions that have been prepared by the audience. Gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight. The first question is, please introduce yourself and explain why you are the best candidate for the job. And we'll go from right to left, and we'll circle.
Thank you, Tim. I want to thank Greenfield Chamber Main Street and the Warren Cultural Center for hosting this event, and especially thank you to all of you for turning out tonight. This is just a wonderful demonstration of civic involvement. I'm Warren Varley, and I'm running for the Iowa House because you deserve effective representation in our state capitol. I'm a lifelong farmer and work and live on the farm that I grew up on. And my wife and I also raised our children there. I've also practiced law for over 25 years and been a small-town businessman. And in that capacity, I've been able to develop and demonstrate a passion for rural development and economic development. I've done that through various organizations. I served for 8 years on the hospital board here. I spent a dozen years as a director for the Adair County Farm Bureau. I've served my church, I've served our school system. I've worked for various community and economic development organizations. And as an example, in Stewart, I worked with a group that got 32 nice new homes built. I led a regional economic development group, Midwest Partnership, that developed a program called the Employer Educator Summit, and that became the template for the governor's Future Ready Iowa program. That's the kind of experience and understanding and passion that I want to take to the Capitol on your behalf.
All right. Hi, guys. I want to thank you all for coming out and participating in this event. It's important to hear from those who want to represent you at every level of government. I also want to thank the Cultural Center and their staff for hosting such an event. For those of you who don't know me yet, my name is Ray Sorensen, but I'm better known as Bubba. How did I get that nickname? Well, I was a fat little baby and my dad thought it would be hilarious to call me Bubba, and people just never stopped. If you don't recognize my name, you may know me by my work, as I'm the artist of the Freedom Rocks across Iowa. My wife Maria and I have successfully run our small business, Sorensen Studios, for the past 10 years. We are also raising 2 wonderful children that I couldn't be prouder of. My daughter Independence just turned 7 yesterday. My son Michael recently turned 4. Why am I the best candidate for the job? Well, honestly, I think most of us in this room could and would be great representatives. I, like all of you, want what's best for our district and our state. I put my name on the ballot because I believe that my small business work ethic, my experience in dealing with folks from all walks of life across our great state, and my work experience at the State House makes me the right choice to represent you. Thank you.
Second question, please explain your vision of the future for House District 20 and how you are suited to bringing about this future as a legislator.
Alrighty. My vision for the future of House District 20 is to remain ranked as the #1 state in the country. My vision involves continuing to invest at a fast rate in our K-12 education. My vision involves reaching #1 in the country for teacher salaries. My vision involves fixing the Medicaid MCO problems and making sure our long-term care patients are taken care of. My vision involves property tax reform and making sure it's never a burden on our fixed-income senior citizens. My vision involves access to competitive, high-speed internet access in every nook and cranny in Iowa. My vision involves pulling these things together at the State House and keeping the American dream alive and well here in rural Iowa. Reducing burdensome red tape on small businesses, ensure Iowans can attain the skills needed for new career opportunities and bigger paychecks, and continue to leave more money in the pockets of hardworking Iowa taxpayers. How do we bring this all about? By putting aside partisan identity politics and working with all my future colleagues to find the best path. It's easy for us both to say what we want and will do, but at the end of the day, we are going to be 1/150th of a moving body at the State House, and it will take us all willing to look at what's best for Iowa, not what's best for our parties.
As an attorney and economic development leader, I certainly understand the concerns facing rural Iowa, such as declining population and increasing poverty. But I'm also, more important, I'm aware of the tremendous opportunities that we have here in rural Iowa that we're ready to unlock. We sit on the richest soil in the world and abundant rainfall, sometimes too abundant. We have housing and community infrastructure at a time when it's in critically short supply, both in the state and across the country. And best of all, we have wonderful quality of life and community spirit. I'm revel in that every time I go out and door knock and meet people in their meetings and civic organizations. Fiscal responsibility requires investment in infrastructure, though. Access to high-speed internet is certainly a critical component, and we've seen that our independent telcos like Cumberland and Coon Valley and Kenora have been leaders in getting high-speed internet out to our rural customers. And by tweaking rules, we can make them more competitive and benefit consumers. The most important of all is human infrastructure. We have a critical shortage of middle skills workforce.
Now we go to the panel that are selecting questions that are going to give them to me. About 1/3 of the state revenue is derived from the farm economy. With consolidation of farm operations and farm income dropping over the past 5 years, what do you think can be done about rural decline and this loss of state revenue? And Mr. Varley, you first.
Thank you, Tim. The best thing that we could do to turn around rural farm income is to invest fully in our Regents institutions, Iowa State in particular. The reason that we're leaders in agriculture throughout the world is because we've invested in the newest technology and moving forward with research. And by setting money aside for tax cuts for companies like Apple and the fertilizer plant in Mount Pleasant, we've shorted ourselves of funding for critical things like supporting our Regents institutions and community colleges. And those are really the engines for future economic growth. In terms of farm income shortfalls in the short term, the best thing we could do is bring pressure to bear on federal officials to put an end to these tariffs that they're not going to be a threat in this fiscal year because our crop insurance is still based on last March's prices. But come next year, we're in for real pressure, particularly since the legislature cut taxes and are going to leave us about $100 million short just going into the session at the beginning.
Question, about 1/3 of the state revenue is derived from the farm economy. With consolidation of farm operations and farm income dropping over the past 5 years, what do you think can be done about rural decline and this loss of state revenue?
Well, loss of, rural Iowa is really in a unique spot. We're losing our youth, and part of that is due to, like I've said before, overtaxing, overregulating, and then a big part of it is now, especially with our youth, our lack of internet access out here. Half of people in this county, don't have access to broadband internet. That's appalling. To operate, and especially with high-tech farm equipment now, everything's connected to the internet. We need it in order to keep millennials here, in order to keep your kids on the family farm. It's a big get to get us connected in every place. I think that would be very valuable. I think another thing to help. Another thing I think that could help is working on. Sorry, man, you got me off build there. Building quality of life. quality of life is important to young people, and that really does draw us in. I see I'm running out of time, so I'll end it there. Thank you.
The next question, and we'll start with, and I assume because your father called you that, I guess I get to call you that too.
Absolutely.
Bubba's is going to answer this one. What is your view on how Medicaid is administered in the state of Iowa?
So, concerns right now on healthcare. Right now, we're focused on Medicaid and its privatization, and how that was put in motion. I understand why it was implemented. It was due to some unsustainability of the previous fee-based system. I do disagree how it came about with executive action, but the goal of privatization was to reduce the ever-inflating costs and significant fraud and waste. With the previous state system, the skyrocketing costs made it nearly impossible to properly budget. There's an active incentive to do better if they don't provide better service for less cost. Customers can and will choose their competitors. The government doesn't have an incentive. And that being said, most of the well Medicaid recipients, managed care is actually working out and continues to improve. I expect the privatization to slow the rise in Medicaid spending over time, due again to the competition. The glaring problem comes from the mismanagement and severe cuts to our long-term care patients. They deserve better, and we need to take action. A possible remedy would be to just take the long-term care patients out of managed care and put them back with the state. This allows MCOs to concentrate on what they're succeeding at, and the state can better budget for the smaller chunk of long-term care patients. My end goal is to make sure that all Iowans are taken care of.
And I'll repeat the question again. What is your view on how Medicaid is administered in the state of Iowa?
Thank you, Tim. The Medicaid privatization has been a disaster. There's no question about that. I hear stories every day about people like Jamie Campbell who are denied services. There's another woman here in Adair County who's disabled, and she was given 5 days to prove that she didn't have financial resources that would disqualify her from Medicaid. She didn't get the cash value on her life insurance within that 5 days, and it was turned, and they canceled her Medicaid. Now she's at serious risk of having major health problems. There was another gentleman that's because of this procedure that they have where they deny before they'll even consider approving, another gentleman whose care was delayed, and as a result, the care that he needed was much more extreme. He lost his job in the meantime. It's just been a disaster. It's been a disaster for providers. The hospital here in town had to add another administrator just to deal with the additional paperwork that's being generated by the private MCL. And there aren't any choices. We started out with 3 companies. 2 of them broke the contract because they couldn't manage it, where the percentage of the healthcare dollars that's going to administration is running from 12 to 20%. Those are healthcare dollars that should be going to pay for healthcare. Under the state-managed system, it was between 4 and 5% for administration.
Next question, and Morton, you'll start this one. Funding of school systems is a topic of discussion. What are your priorities on funding schools, both public and private?
Thank you, Tim. This is a critical issue for the state. This is one of the most important things that the state does, is provide education for our children, PK through 12 and on into community college and Regents institutions. And the funding has been incrementally increased, but not at the rate of inflation, so it's effectively a cut. In the meantime, schools are given more and more things to do without funding, so effectively their resources are being cut. They're running into the same kind of administrative problems I referred to at the hospital. This has to be addressed if we're going to have a bright future, especially here in rural Iowa. We face a critical situation in terms of our transportation costs. They vary greatly from district to district. My dad was in the legislature when the current formula for funding public schools was put into effect, and it's time to upgrade it. Right now, it's people in very property wealthy districts pay a very low levy. People and the highest is in Okoboji, where it's a tiny sliver that they have to pay towards schools out of their property tax because they're so property wealthy. The poorest is actually in Perry, where they have to pay a higher levy in order to match the formula. So this really needs to be addressed. It's going to take more resources.
Bubba, same question to you. Funding of school systems is a topic of discussion. What are your priorities on funding schools, both public and private?
I believe elections at this level come down to a philosophy of, does this candidate trust the citizen? Or does he think that the state should lord over you? In education, I believe the parents are the best stewards of their child's education and not the state. We need to stop restricting schools by painting them all with a white brush. What works for Waukee schools is not going to work for Nottoway Valley schools or Orient schools. I would like to give more local control and responsibility to our school boards to fund and communicate with their employees to suit their unique abilities and to be able to better play to their strengths, allowing them to access funds locked up in certain silos so they can better pay their teachers and better equip their classrooms. I think we should continue to aggressively invest in K through 12, which sits at 42% of Iowa's $7 billion budget that we can vote on. A little fun fact for you, did you know the last real decrease in spending on education was by Chet Culver and with a Democrat-controlled legislature? Republican control has led to a balanced budget and a budget surplus, which should help add even more funding to education next year. Listen, it's hard to unseat incumbents unless you paint doom and gloom and tell everyone the sky is falling. Well, Chicken Little, turn off the cable news and step outside. The sky is not falling. In fact, if we keep moving forward, we will continue to be the best state in this union.
This next question, Bubba, you'll start and Warren next. Women's reproductive issues are of much concern. A woman's right to a safe and legal abortion is the law of the land. But Iowa has most recently passed a bill that limits a woman's rights to an abortion after a fetal heartbeat can be detected. What is your opinion on this recent legislation?
I think we all care about women's health. Obviously, the question comes down to, where does life begin? Iowa law had barred most abortions after 20 weeks under legislation enacted a year ago. Those provisions were among the most strict abortion bans in the country. I thought that was a fair compromise. Then I heard the language in the fetal heartbeat bill, and it made sense to me as well, as it makes sense that life begins and ends at the end and beginning of a heartbeat. Long story short, I would love to hear from my constituents on this issue, especially the women of this district.
Warren, I'll read it again. Women's reproductive issues are of much concern. A woman's right to a safe and legal abortion is the law of the land, but Iowa has most recently passed a bill that limits a woman's rights to an abortion after a fetal heartbeat can be detected. What is your opinion on this piece of legislation?
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate the gravity that everybody approaches the abortion issue with. I wish that we didn't have to have any abortions, but I also know as a farmer that's not always a possibility, and my mother and my mother-in-law both had miscarriages. So this is a very, an issue that pulls at the heartstrings. I have to refer to my own experience when my wife and I were expecting, well, she was expecting one of her children. We got a call from the obstetrician, and they said that a blood test indicated that our child might be at high risk for Down syndrome, and they wanted to do an amniocentesis. And Karen and I discussed it, and I said, well, what difference would it make? We're going to have the child anyway, so why take the risk of the amniocentesis? And so that's where I come from on this issue. Now, I think the law is currently framed, would be struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court, although the composition of the U.S. Supreme Court is in flux, so that may change, and it may be back in the hands of the state legislature. One of the things my dad repeatedly said when he was in the legislature is that you cannot legislate morality. This is an issue where we shouldn't have a policeman in the doctor's office, the patient and doctor. This should be a medical decision.
Thank you. Warren, you'll start on this question. Water quality improvements is a concern in terms of expenses for treating water to ensure its purity for drinking, as well as for preserving our soil and wildlife. How should water quality improvements be administered and paid for?
Thank you, Tim. Well, water quality is certainly a vital issue to all of us. After this last summer, we're acutely aware of how important it is to have a safe and accessible water supply. And it's been somewhat embarrassing that Iowa has so many impaired waterways and that our share of the dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico is actually increasing. I'm glad that you mentioned soil, because I think soil health is integrally related to improving our water quality, and protecting the soil is something I care about very deeply. I went to Iowa State and I majored in agronomy, and I worked for the Soil Conservation Service here in Greenfield, and I worked for soil scientists up at Iowa State when I was a student up there. So I care very deeply and have experimented on our farm with cover crops. And it's not cheap, so we are going to have funding sources for this. Now, people in this state voted to, if the sales tax is ever increased, to put a fraction of that penny increase toward paying for water quality improvements. I don't think that should be the only source, but I think that's probably where we should start, since that's what the people of this state voted for.
Water quality improvements is a concern in terms of expenses for treating water to ensure its purity for drinking, as well as for preserving our soil and water life. How should water quality improvements be administered and paid for?
Well, farmers know best how to protect their land from soil erosion, and surprise, they also drink the water. So they are voluntarily already working to improve conservation across the state. Farmers face risks to their production systems when adopting a new practice, and we can't let the state over-regulate the cost of doing business. There are helpful practices being implemented as we speak to counter soil erosion and improve water quality, and the water quality funding bill is a great start. Another rural Iowa issue another way to pay for, can you repeat the question again?
Water quality improvements is a concern in terms of expenses for treating water and to ensure its purity for drinking, as well as for preserving soil and water life. How should water quality improvements be administered and paid for?
So to finish that thought, farmers know best how to steward their land, and we should incentivize the farmers to continue to practice better conservation.
Bubba, we'll start with you on this one. How do immigration policies play into the future of Iowa?
Okay, well, immigration policies are usually a federal issue, but if you expand on that, I guess sanctuary cities or illegal immigration, obviously, I think everyone should be against illegal immigration. You don't want to start becoming a citizen, and the first thing you're doing as said citizen is breaking a law. What was the end of it? How does it affect?
How does it play into the future of
How
Iowa?
does it play into the future of Iowa? Well, I think in the future of Iowa, we're going to look at Iowa and how we operate, especially with farms, and we've got such a low unemployment rate, and folks need workers, especially on our farms. I think we need to work to implement the E-Verify system to make sure that those who are coming to work for a farmer are who they say they are, and so we can't allow illegal immigration to infiltrate this country. A country is nothing without borders. A state is nothing without borders. We need to enforce said borders.
Warren, how do immigration policies play into the future of Iowa?
Thank you, Tim. Well, as Bubba said, that's a federal issue, but the first thing I would do as your representative is bring pressure to bear on our federal representatives to improve the H-1 visa program. We need, as Bubba said, the best thing we can do to expand our workforce is to teach STEM and vocational education in our schools, but we have a workforce shortage right now. And just because we all agree on keeping illegal immigration to a minimum, it doesn't mean we shouldn't facilitate ways in order to allow immigrant labor, people who want to work, to come here and fill jobs. Right now, there are several industries that are in real stress because they can't find workers. And among the leaders in that are farms that need farm workers, from immigrant harvesters to people that work in our dairy farms. The other flip side of that is we need to be welcoming to the immigrants who are here legally. The communities that are really succeeding in Iowa are ones like Storm Lake and Denison, where we remember that we all came from immigrant families ourselves, and by welcoming them and integrating them into our society, we can increase the economic pie for everyone.
Warren, we'll start with you on this question. Working families rely on child care systems in order to arrive at work ready to be productive. When working parents can rely on high-quality, affordable child care, their productivity increases, absenteeism is reduced, and turnover is minimalized. What will you do to help young families in the workforce?
Thank you, Tim. That is one of the top concerns that we run into in economic development, especially rural economic development. We've been struggling in Stewart to expand child care opportunities. And it's also those families that need a second income the most that can least afford private daycare. So I think the state does have a role in encouraging opportunities both for private daycare and opportunities for schools in order to provide PK and early childhood learning opportunities that can help alleviate the stress on our private daycare providers. But this is definitely an area where a dollar invested will reap multiple rewards for our state.
Let me read it one more time. Working families rely on the child care system in order to arrive at work ready to be productive. When working parents can rely on high-quality, affordable child care, their productivity increases, absenteeism is reduced, and overturn is minimalized. What will you do to help young families in the workforce?
Well, yeah, especially starting with that last piece, what will we do to help young families in the workforce? I think we do definitely need to focus on the Iowa economy. For years, economic developers' goal was to attract an employer to provide jobs, but I've been looking at research and that's shown that hasn't really been sustainable. You can bring in a factory with 1,000 jobs, but that's not going to help much if you don't look at the community as a whole and see what it can sustain. Building quality of life attracts employees because it creates a place where people want to live, and that attracts employers. Small towns need young people if they're to have a viable future, and to do that, we must create places to live that appeal to millennials. What appeals to young people in quality is quality of life. And I think that can tie into, you know, better childcare, better daycares, things like that. That's not much.
We're going to go into our last question, and then each candidate will have a 2-minute summary and closing remarks. The last question is, Bubba, you'll start on this one. What is your opinion on the legalization of medical cannabis?
I am, first of all, any of these hypotheticals, I would definitely want to see the bill before making a definite decision. But I am completely open to looking at medical marijuana and seeing what its benefits can offer. To be honest, it's not something that's been brought up as I've knocked doors. You know, beyond that, I don't know anything about it. I've never smoked it, never had a reason to, so I don't know even the recreational side of it. So I guess I'll claim ignorance on the marijuana issue, and I hope to learn more about it.
Warren, what is your opinion on the legalization of medical cannabis?
Well, I do have an opinion, and it has come up when I've knocked doors. I had a woman that told me a really heart-wrenching story about how her doctor said that it would be beneficial to her to have cannabinol, but for her to do that, she'd have to go to Colorado, and she just didn't have the resources to do that. I've known friends and family members who are struggling with cancer, and the most heart-rending case of all is there's compelling research that it's a benefit to children who suffer from seizures. So I think you can gather from that I would be in favor of allowing medical marijuana. And, I don't think we're ready for recreational marijuana yet. And that's an issue that really needs to be addressed on the federal level first. But I think the research is out there, and then there should be more research allowed on the therapeutic benefits of compounds from cannabis.
We will let the candidates do their closing statements. It will be up to 2 minutes, and by draw, Warren, you will be first, and Bubba, you will close.
Well, thank you once again for turning out tonight. I'm Warren Varley, and I want to humbly ask for your vote November 6th. When I went off to college at Iowa State University to study agronomy, I fully intended to come back to the farm, because the farm and this place is near and dear to my heart. But while I was up at Iowa State, I was also taking classes in ag mechanics and ag economics and animal science and ag law. And my ag law professor, Dr. Neil Harrell, suggested that I ought to consider going to law school. An even more important thing happened to me while I was up at Iowa State. I met Karen, my wife, and we got married, and she wanted to continue her education too. So we looked but she stayed in the sciences at that time. And we looked around, and we're fortunate enough to get into the best school that suited both of our career paths. Went to Cornell University in upstate New York. But we always knew we wanted to come back here because, as I say, this place is near and dear to my heart. We wanted to raise our children in Iowa, in good Iowa schools. And as I started our practice here, I've fallen in love with this place. I do the community work that I do because I love this place. This is not about me. This is about public service. And I learned about public service from my father, Andy Varley, who served this area in the Iowa legislature and served a term as Speaker of the House. And I think Iowans are tired of two extremes, butting heads and perpetual gridlock. What my father used to do was get everybody to come to a consensus around the idea that we're all in this for the betterment of Iowa. And that's what I want to do as your representative. Please vote Varley November 6th.
All right, guys, thank you for coming out and participating in this. I know it probably wasn't the most exciting thing you could have been doing this evening, but it's really getting to understand who you're voting for, and I think that's wise. I'm going to keep it short. I'm a small business owner who loves this state and loves this country. I think you all know, who know me know that. A couple issues that weren't brought up. I'm pro Second Amendment. I think the Constitution states all that it needs to state there. The right to bear arms shall not be infringed. I wanted to make that clear. I'm also for the voter ID. I believe very staunchly that that is the best way to protect the integrity of our voting in this state. Beyond that, I appreciate y'all coming out again. If you want to learn more about where I stand, you can visit my website at sorensen.rocks, and I would very much appreciate you voting for Bubba on November 6th. Thank you.
Just a couple of things. A big round of applause for these. It costs a lot of money to run this place, so if you've got a little extra cash in your pocket, I wish that you'd put it in the basket on your way out. Thanks for coming out. This is what democracy is about. When people of goodwill who live in the same town and share the same community come together and ask hard questions of the people who want to represent them. And I surely appreciate living here and all of you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us tonight. We just finished up at the Warren Cultural Center. Thanks for hosting us tonight. What a great turnout.
Very good.